All right, guys, how's it going? I feel like I finally have everything set up correctly. The true test will be when I go back to edit this. I guess we'll know for sure because I am a Lone Ranger this week. All right. Normally, Mia handles a lot of the technical back end of these kinds of productions. That's what she's really good at. I normally just get the link and I show up and I chat with you. So today I'm completely flying solo because she is at Universal with her family and she's having a great time right now, probably going 70 miles per hour on a roller coaster, which I don't know about you guys, but I'm not one for roller coasters. So I'm perfectly fine to be here on terra firma talking with you. But love Mia. She's honestly my better business half. I joke about that all the time, but she truly does. Like, I mean, we just divide and conquer, right? So it's weird when one of us isn't around to, you know, do our normal duties. So I'm trying to, manage her fabulous end of things. So yeah, she's really set me up for success this week. So I'm not complaining. I'm just popping in here alone to talk to you guys today a little bit about my own story. She asked me if I would come on and talk about kind of how I got started in graphic design and how I ended up here as a part of this company and kind of just like the journey up until this point. So I am a Nashville native, born and raised in Nashville, and I have always had a bit of a love for all things creative, like photography, art, ultimately design, like everything that kind of falls into that category. So I knew pretty early on that I would want to go into some sort of creative field. My dad's a musician, my sister's a musician. I just come from a very creative family, and I was always encouraged to chase my dreams and, forge my own path. Never any talk of like, oh, you need a backup plan or like, oh, you have to make a certain salary. My parents just always really encouraged me to shoot for the stars and follow my dreams and figure out what I'm really passionate about and do that thing. So my dad had gotten me a DSLR camera when I was in high school, like early high school, which was a huge deal for me and really opened a lot of doors. I ended up doing some freelance photography through high school and college and really kind of working my summers and like my fall breaks and making pretty good money just doing what I loved. I loved taking pictures, but even more so, I loved editing them after I took a Photoshop course in middle school, actually. Very cutting edge because computers weren't even like the Macs back then were those like big, like bulky Macs that like were look like an old school TV. Like I don't even know. They were like not the Mac minis, but something like that. Anyway, it was all pretty new technology. Like it was like right around like the Gen 1 or Gen 2 iPhone coming out. So anyway, I learned Photoshop back before it was cool. And I had a teacher that really like poured into me in that way and really showed us some amazing tutorials and stuff that really set me on that path. So I already had some knowledge of photo manipulation and stuff. So I loved going to take family pictures of people. And then, like, if their kid was like crying in one picture, but had a perfect smile in another picture and they needed a composite image, I would just head swap. And I loved doing that. And I loved being able to tell people, like, hey, you probably can't tell, but this kid's totally head swapped here. And the people would be like, what? I didn't know you could do that. I can't tell. I would have known unless you told me. So anyway, so that stuff kind of started pretty early on for me in high school, middle school, high school, college. So by the time that it was time for me to decide where I wanted to go after high school, I knew that it would either be photography or graphic design because by that point I had kind of an understanding of what graphic design was. And I was like, oh, that might be a good combination of like all of the things that I enjoy doing on the computer, like digitally. Graphic design is what I landed on. By no real like conscious decision. I mean, I ended up at MTSU. I chose to go there because it was in state and everything, but I didn't know that they had such a fabulous graphic design program because it wasn't really marketed. They didn't really like tout themselves as being a school, with a great design program. There's some other schools in the area that were more known for that. So I happened into it really. And I had the best 4-year experience where I really got to hone all the skills that I came in with and like learn the softwares, learn all the Adobe stuff and yeah, flourish. I mean, I met incredible people there and I just really enjoyed my time. I know a lot of people think that going to college and getting an art degree, like because I have a BFA, they're like, that's all stuff you could teach yourself. Like, why would you pay for that? But honestly, all that knowledge is invaluable to me. And I had such a great college experience. So that was like the genesis of the stuff that I do here now in graphic design and marketing. But backing up a little bit, okay, where I met Mia was my first big girl job that I had. So I was hired part time back at the very end of high school, very beginning of college. So like 29, no, 2015. Okay. And I was hired by a woman that I knew from my church who had started a small Etsy shop doing, it wasn't even fashion yet at the time. It was like baby slings and baby wraps that she was like sewing herself at her sewing machine. So, like, yeah, really cool, one of a kind ring slings with like colorful fabric. And she really had been making them for herself to carry her own babies and got enough attention for it that she started making them. So she had a small Etsy shop where she would launch just small batches of things, but she was a mom of like 4 at the time, I think, 3 or 4. And so she needed help shipping product and she also needed help taking pictures of her product to upload onto Etsy. So she reached out to me, just felt led to message me on Facebook and was like, "Hey, I don't know if you're looking for a job, but I really feel like there's a few things I need help with that you might be really good at and maybe it'd be a great weekend job for you. I know you're about to start college." So I met with her and I was her first hire. Like I was just her right-hand man. And I ended up, going once a week or once every other week to pick up product from her to bring back to my parents' house. And I would mail her stuff out on the weekends, just ship it for her, wrap it real nice and ship it. And I did some product photography for her and I did some like model photography for her. So like the listing images and also photo shoot pictures and stuff of like her and her kids and things like that. So it was immediately a really great fit and it was perfect for me as a college student that was commuting to campus 4 days a week. I then had like the 3 days a week to work with her, do her stuff from my house remotely. So that was, yeah, 2015, 2016. And so I did that all through college. And then I ended up meeting Mia in 2019. So once I graduated college, I actually had 2 offers on the table, which I feel like it was a big crossroads in my life. It was like a really big, like turning point learning experience, all of that. So I had interned with another small business and I really liked that girl. Like she was very similar to my boss at the little fashion brand. Like they were very much in the similar stage of business and they were both like women in their 30s who like had really made a really great living and life for themselves. And I was watching both of their businesses grow. And I just really respected both of them so much. And I learned so much from each of them in different capacities. And I think all of that has fed into like, where I'm at now. So I anticipated quitting the little Etsy shop to work with this girl who owns, it's like a gifts brand. Like she does screen printed t-shirts and hats and tea towels and stuff like that with Southern phrases on them. And she designed all the artwork and she would get them screen printed and then like wholesale them to boutiques around town. So her whole thing was really cool too. I got to see the behind the scenes of like, the big screen printing companies and her picking Pantone colors and like her, designing something on her iPad and then fine tuning it in Illustrator and sending it off to be printed. It was a really cool process. And I was just a summer intern for her just for school credit. And she liked me so much that she offered me a full-time job when I graduated college. And it was very enticing to me. And I just assumed that like, okay, cool. This is what I do now. I have my degree. Like I picked the job in the design field and this is like my entry level position. And I go from there. But then when I went to tell my boss at the Etsy store that I was going to be quitting to take this other job now that I'm graduated, this is the end of the road for me. She actually surprised me and gave me a counter offer to bring me on full time. And I did not at all expect that. And it really threw me for a loop because I felt like, okay, I've already made my decision. Like this other, this internship girl already knows to expect me. Like, it just threw me for a loop because I was like, wow, I didn't think she'd be able to afford to offer me a full-time position with her Etsy shop. And so I spent a lot of time just mulling that over and writing out a physical pros and cons list and like crying and praying and asking my parents and asking all my friends and like really weighing that decision because it felt like 2 really great opportunities. And I think that's a great position to be in, but it's also a hard one to be in if you're a people pleaser like me, because at the end of the day, knowing that you have to let somebody down, like there's no way you get out of this without disappointing someone. That's hard because I just wanted to keep them both happy. So I ultimately decided to stay with the Etsy store, partially because I was already so well versed in everything that I did there, which was grew to be far beyond just shipping and photography. Like by the time this decision was on the table, I knew so much about ShipStation and Shopify and, just a lot of those like e-commerce things. And I thought that was valuable knowledge. So I didn't seek out, to learn that, but I did learn it on the job just by nature of what I was doing. I was good at customer service. There's a lot of different areas where I was being used at that job. And then I knew that kind of playing second fiddle to the designer of the brand at the internship job, I thought, I could enjoy that, but I've really kind of worked my way up already over here. And this business is growing really, really fast. And I feel like I could play an important role in that. So that's what I decided. I called my internship boss and didn't cry, but until I got off the phone. But I told her, I was like, look, I have to decline. I've been surprised by this counteroffer. No bad feelings whatsoever. And I really hope that we can work together again in the future. But this other thing is the right fit for me. And she was so nice. She was very surprised. And she was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And she hung up and she called me back about 5 minutes later after I had already started crying. I got it back together and got back on the phone. And she said, is this about money? Because if it's about money, I can up the offer. I really want you and I'll fight for you. And I was so touched by that, but it also made everything 10 times worse because I'm like, no, I thought I just let you down easy. Now you're back because what? You're going to offer me more money? Like, oh my gosh. And I ultimately told her, like, hey, I totally am flattered, but to be honest, it's not really about money. I just know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And she was like, okay, I totally respect that. Just had to try. And so it wasn't that awkward after that. Like we've spoken to each other over the years here and there and run into each other in different places. But that was a really big moment for me, especially as, just a fresh college graduate who did not feel like an adult in the real world yet at all. So yeah, then I told my other boss I'm in. And so I became her first full-time hire. And that company went on to grow over the next, what was it, like 4 or 5 years I was there. It went on to grow exponentially into a multi-million-dollar company. And that's obviously where I met Mia. And I have to be so grateful that that's where I ended up, choosing to stay, because obviously that was a huge part of the reason and maybe the reason why I was led to stay at that company, because Mia and I obviously have this brand now and such a close working relationship. And we really were destined to meet. So my boss ended up hiring Mia around the same time as me, but we were like passing ships in the night because up until I was hired full time, I'd been working from my own house. Mia had been doing stuff kind of off and on for her, but not like she would be physically going to her house to take pictures and to post on socials and that kind of a thing. So we hadn't interfaced at all. I didn't even really know about Mia until a little bit later on. So once I was hired full time and started working out of an actual like workplace, then Mia and I met. And at the time, Mia was working a factory job and she was making decent money, but she was miserable. And she would work all day at her factory job and then come in after that job to take pictures over here at the Etsy shop. And she was just so driven and determined. I remember being blown away. I'm like, how did she just go and bust her butt all day moving boxes? And now she's here with a smile on to be able to do this job. That's 2 jobs at once. Like, this girl's crazy, But she had told me, like, once we met, like, that her whole plan was to quit the factory job and come on full time at that company. And she did shortly after I was hired. Mia was hired there. And it was just me and her. And then our other friend, Patrick. It was the 3 of us. And we would work out of this little house in Gallatin 5 days a week. And my boss would be in and out, but she was homeschooling and raising her kids, down the street. So she would pop in and pop out and be there as needed. But for the most part, it was Mia and me and Patrick that really ran the operations day to day. And we were able to, between the 3 of us, cover everything that needed covered. And there was even an instance where our boss had to go out of town for a family emergency unexpectedly, like completely unplanned, unexpectedly. And she left for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember she was just kind of like, guys, I would have planned this differently, but I don't really have a choice here. So this is make or break. Like, can you guys run the business while I'm gone? And we did. And we had no idea what we were doing, but we figured it out. And we put our 3 heads together. And it's just like really looking back, like that season was crazy and intimidating for a lot of different ways. But ultimately, like we bonded so much and we learned so quickly how to work well together. And I was just really proud of us for being 3 young people with, not a whole lot of experience, sticking to it and getting our heads together and strategizing and planning and, making sure first and foremost that we were taking care of the customers. That was always something that was important to us. Like Mia and I have both worked in customer service a lot, and we just really felt like, okay, like that is one of the most important things. Obviously, these people who are investing money into one of a kind items, like we want to make sure that they feel seen and heard and valued. And we want to respond to every comment. We want to respond to every email. And, if somebody's asking us to go the extra mile, even if it's a little annoying and we've already been working overtime today, like, yeah, sure, I'll go look at that one sling and see if it's actually navy blue or black because you can't tell from the picture on the website. Yeah, I mean, those were just like the trenches, but in such a cool way, especially looking back. It was a really special season. And to have not really known each other for that long, but to have worked together that closely and everything, like clearly that made us grow closer friends even faster. And so we've always gotten along and we've always enjoyed working closely together. So anyway, that was a great season. And then we ended up moving workplaces a couple different times as the company grew and as more people were hired on. We ended up working out of our boss's basement once they moved houses to a much bigger house. And then we ended up working out at this really cool space downtown, which felt like such a cool upgrade. It felt very like, I don't know, it was a cool old building with a bunch of other businesses in it, like a coffee shop and, a hair salon and some other things. And so it was really cool to watch the different phases of this business as it grew. And Mia and I ultimately became like C's of the company. Like I was COO and she was CMO. And there's another girl that was also a C. But basically, I mean, we worked our way up in the company. We proved our loyalty and we proved our competence and all of those things and, grew to basically manage teams under us. Like I managed a team, Mia managed a team. And um, we really just got to see the ins and outs of a company that went from an Etsy shop doing like 20 orders a week on a busy week to a company selling 300 or 400 orders in one launch, and then launching multiple times a month. Like it was really, really cool. And I have to say, like the logistics and stuff that we learned, and like again, the e-commerce side of things and the small business side of things that we learned is really invaluable. And it's not something I ever would have signed on for if it was in the job description because I would have been like, I am a creative through and through. Like what I like to do is make things look pretty. I can manage, sure. Like if you want me to manage some people, I can do that, but I don't have any interest in like analytics or strategy or anything like that. Like I first and foremost love making things look pretty and doing like the design part. Like don't make me use my math brain or, get too logical. Like that's just not who I am. But again, learning that along the way was really valuable because if you're going to be a small business owner, turns out whether you like it or not, you have to know some of that. So that has been a huge help to Mia and I as we've ventured into our own things. Fast forwarding to that, yeah, we ended up leaving that company in like the end of 2023. So by that point, I had just been there so many years and the company had grown and changed so much and so many more voices had become a part of it. We had gone from being a very like close knit family, truly, not just in like people always say that like your work family. Like no, like we were a very tight knit group of employees and never had any drama, never had anything stressful, relationally, like office morale wise, up until probably like the last year that I was there, just with some new hires that were from New York. And they just didn't really, I don't think they ever really got how and why we did things the way that we did them. And I think there was a lot of pressure. I think they put a lot of pressure on my boss to change how she was doing things to make it more like legitimate, maybe, or something, or more like the rest of the fashion industry, when really the reason that it was such a successful business is because it was marching to the beat of its own drum and because my boss had a real big emphasis for a long time on people over profit, just like Mia and I do. And for years that was the case. And then sadly, towards the end of our time there, it was a major switch up. My boss started to really kind of lean heavier on these industry professionals that we had hired who we're trying to get everybody to do things differently. And there's a lot of corners being cut and there was a lot of drama being started. And there was just, yeah, it became way more about money than it did about like the heartbeat behind the brand. And that was when Mia and I both looked at each other and we were like, if we no longer have the power to kind of shape and like withhold, like help like hold together like the culture here and like really help everyone like come at this from the same angle, right? Then I don't know that this is a great fit anymore. And that's a hard point to come to, right? I had never quit a job before, it just wouldn't occur to me. Like, again, I'm a people pleaser and I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to put anybody in a weird position, but I think there comes a point where you have to stand up for your own morals and your own integrity. And it had just gotten pretty dark and pretty ugly by the end. And we were like, you know what? We're young. We don't have to, stay for longer just to prove something to somebody, right? So, yeah. So I quit first, and then Mia followed shortly after. And we spent a couple months not really knowing what we wanted to do next. It was like a lot of like searching. We both applied to a lot of other jobs. I kind of assumed that I would find like a real true graphic design industry job because I hadn't really worked one. Like this other job was pretty, what would you say, like non-traditional. Like I did do some design definitely by the end, and I got to design some amazing things. Like there was a whole clothing line that she was doing by the end that I got to design the art for, and that was like a highlight of my time there. So cool. Would not have had that opportunity otherwise. But yeah, after a certain point, I was just like, yeah, maybe I should just apply to more of like a 9 to 5 design job where I'm just designing from sun up to sundown, and I'm not, managing a team, and I'm not doing all these other odd jobs, but I'm just focusing on where my real talent is. So I applied to several and, didn't hear back. That was kind of the trend at the time. I think even still it's hard just to hear back when you're applying on like LinkedIn and stuff. Unless you have a direct lead from somebody you trust, it's hard to get an interview and to get a call back. So I was not too discouraged, but I was kind of like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Maybe that's not what God has for me next. And maybe I'm supposed to, be open to some other opportunity that's going to come up or something. Like I wasn't too stressed. Mia had applied to a few different jobs and she wasn't jazzed about them, but she had at least a fallback plan in case she needed to, make money quickly. So we kind of, let Christmas go by and stuff. And we kind of took December 2023 off more or less. Like we're applying in the background and we're dreaming and we're envisioning, but we're not like working, which was great actually to have that break. I'm sure that those of you who have gone like, switch jobs, like that little brief vacation period in between where you get to fully reset and, fully close one chapter to start the next, like that's really important time. So I'm glad we had that. But then January came around and Mia and I looked at each other and we were like, we don't want to be done working together yet. Like we don't really, we just, there's something else. Like I don't think we're supposed to be done. And I had actually done some freelance through that December period with some clients who, I do graphic design stuff on the side and I have all since like high school, early college. So that was normal for me. But I started having people ask, like, hey, could you handle like text marketing for me? And I'm like, I'm really versed in email marketing, but I don't really know. Text marketing is kind of a different animal and there's different rules and regulations that are pretty serious. And I just knew, I was like, Mia's the one who handled text marketing at the last company. She's really good at this. She knows all the red tape and she's really great at, the analytics side of that and like optimizing texts, optimizing social media posts and that kind of a thing. So when I had more than one person ask me about text marketing, that felt like a sign to me that like, oh, maybe I need to pull Mia in on this somehow and we could become a team, and kind of tackle these projects for people. I didn't think about forming an actual company until I started bringing this up to Mia and she was like, you know what if we just started like a marketing company, the two of us? And it hadn't really, like, we knew we wanted to work together, but for some reason that was just like, hadn't really been a thought in our heads until that moment where that really sparked. And we were like, okay, wonder how hard that would be to do. And so we did a deep dive that January and figured out what that looked like the getting an LLC and like all those like kind of annoying hoops that you have to jump through in the beginning. And we figured it out and we fronted the cost. And I built us a website on Show It, which love Show It. And I was very new to it at the time. I only designed like maybe one site for my sister, on it. So I was like, oh, this will be a fun opportunity for me to play with it and get us a website up. So I did that and, we figured out some kind of pricing packages for some different things. And we launched it at the end of January 2024. Here we are now. Like, it's amazing to me that we have been able to sustain ourselves off of just our own company. Like, that's really unheard of. And we have to keep that in perspective. Like, a lot of businesses don't make money in the first year, they lose money. And Mia and I both profited. It was obviously a much more meager salary than we were used to making when we were the Cs at the other company, but we were able to pay our bills. And it was like, whoa, this is freedom. We've really done this for ourselves. We work from home fully. We make our own schedules, and we've gotten so many amazing clients over the last couple years, almost couple years, who have sustained us through some amazing seasons. Some of them we've had for over a year now, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So all of that's very exciting. The ways that we've been able to grow and shape and mold our own company it's something really special. And to have a business partner who really fills in all the gaps, and we just complete each other, and we really are both just good and specialized in different things. And so we make a great team. And we knew that from working together at the last job. So yeah, that's kind of the long and the short of my story, I guess, as a designer, and of our story in starting this business. We owe a lot to, the last company. Again, like the ending was really rocky, but there's a lot of great years there where we learned so much. And even the parts that were rocky, I mean, we learned a lot there too, just about morals and values and, I don't know, like working with different kinds of people and like figuring out how to problem solve and how to diffuse situations. And all of that is valuable information and knowledge and life experience and all of that. So the fact that we've been able to like take everything that we learned and channel it into this company, obviously it was all meant to be for a reason. And we're just so blessed to be able to get to do what we do every day. And yeah, so now I get to do the graphic design stuff that I love at the email marketing, like I learned at the last couple of jobs. And I make websites, do just campaigns for people's social media. I make social media reels and carousels all day long. And that's the stuff that I really like. It's just really cool now to be able to do what I love and be my own boss. Like to do what I love, but to do it for me. And, Mia and I share like the boss responsibilities. That is something really, really cool. And I don't take it for granted. So I hope that our story is an inspiration to you guys. And if you're looking to take a leap, you're thinking that, your days might be numbered at your current job and, that chapter is closing. Don't be afraid to take a complete leap of faith without having something else lined up, because sometimes that propels you into the coolest opportunities. And that's definitely our story. Of course, it's been scary along the way, but what a rewarding decision to walk away from something that wasn't working anymore and create something that we both really, really love and fills our cup and allows us to help other people. So, okay, I hope you guys enjoyed chatting with me today on this solo episode. Next week, we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming, and Mia and I will be on here together to talk to you guys about more, marketing world things, right? I hope you've been enjoying these. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.